See, that's the reason. C++ came because, as I told you in the previous class itself, the software complexity was rising and there were too many moving parts that we mentioned. So to tackle all these issues and to do better programming or maintainability of whatever code you write, it was good to go with a new approach. So that was the object-oriented approach. Let us just try these programs. I mean, of course, not now. I mean, I'm not telling you to write it now. Whenever you are free, if you are very much interested, then you can look at this question or this idea. Try these programs in C. I mean, try to write them in C if you know C, and see how difficult it is to do this in C and how easy it is to do the same in C++. Of course, at a later time. I'm trying to explain with our level of expertise or with our level of understanding, whatever difficulties that we might face. So the question is very simple: add, subtract, multiply, and divide complex numbers using structure. So this is what you can do in C. Most of you might have done this question or might have tried this program. Anyhow, if you have not tried, then you can try to do it, this program and see how easy or difficult it is. This, I'm just showing you the key, instruction. Key statements of this program. This is not a complete program. Just if when I say using structure, you will definitely have a structure definition like this: complex, int, real, and imaginary. It can be integer or floating depending on what you want to try with. Integer or float, and continue. Right. So this is one way of doing it. Next question would be, try the same program using dynamic memory allocation. Some of you might be knowing dynamic memory allocation, some of you might not be knowing, but this is like, the question is only for those who know C and all this stuff. You can try this. You can try this and see how easy or difficult it is. So if you say dynamic memory allocation, these are the key statements in C that you should be using. So you are declaring a pointer to the same structure, and then you will be allocating some memory and take that allocated memory as a into this pointer A, and then access the real and imaginary of that structure using the dot operator. These are, as I told you, prerequisite was some C or any other coding. Any other language coding, preferably C, because C++ is an extension of C, so it is easy to understand if you know C. Even otherwise, don't worry. You can just leave it aside. Those who know, I'm just telling you, those who know C, then they can look at these few examples for a better understanding. That's all. So this, the highlighted blue, this thing is for using the same program using dynamic memory allocation. As I told you, try it later, not now. Okay. Next, you observe this program. This program is looking like it's a stack operation related program. You have a stack and you have a top, you have a push operation listed here. So obviously it is a stack related C program. Agreed? So because there is no object or classes here, so there is no class definition. So that therefore it should be a C program. So what are the problems in this question or in this program? See, point is stack. If you know what is a stack, then you can even stack is used in almost every application. Stack is used in almost every application. Okay, in almost every application, you will have this stack kind of a data structure. So that means if you have 10 different applications, you probably have to code 10 different stack programs in 10 different applications. So that is not a good idea, right? If you code one stack, because stack is same everywhere. So if you code it once, then you are supposed to reuse it everywhere. So that should be the aim. So write the code once and reuse it 100 times. If you have 100 different codes, 100 different applications, you use all over there. Whenever stack is required, you use it. So that should be the approach, or that should be the idea. So that was not supported by C so easily. What are the problems if you observe having this point in mind? That is code reusability. If you have that point in mind, so the first point is it is not generic. What do you mean by not generic? So not generic in the sense, if I want one more stack in my single code, I mean in my single application, what if I need another stack or more than one stack basically? So that's not possible with this particular code. I have to rename stack as stack 1, stack 2, stack 3. So I have to do some and convert everywhere stack 1, stack to stack 1, stack 2, stack 3, like that. If you want 10 stacks, then 0 to 1, I mean 0 to 9 or 1 to 10. So like that. I mean, so a lot of difficulties or that coding, changes and things like that are required. That is one issue. You cannot have more than one stack with this kind of an approach. Another problem. What if I want a stack of an int type? I mean, sorry, floating type. This is an int type stack because integer is the data type that we have defined. What if I want a floating type, or what if I want a stack of object? The object is generic. I mean, I'm planning to define an object. What if I want a stack of complex numbers? The complex numbers that we just now defined in the previous slide. It's a structure. I want to have a stack of a complex number, right? So again, this program won't work. Means you'll have to recode and do many changes in this and then look how it manages or how it works. Getting the problem? So it's not generic. So because you cannot have more than one stack, you cannot have a different type of a stack. Not easy. It's not you cannot have, but you have to make certain changes. But the rules of the stack remain the same, right? Everywhere. Even if it is an integer stack or a floating point stack or a data structure, that is your complex or some other data structure, structures stack. The rules of the stack is the same. Only thing is the code is changing every time. So this is what software engineers observed, and then they plan to make a better programming approach which treats stack itself as an object or as a class, and that way. And another problem, if you observe, if you still reuse with some changes in the code, and still all the stack will be of the same size. So same data type and same size. Stack of 100, stack of 100 only. And no effective information hiding mechanism. So everything, how do you push, how do you pop? So all that functional details are all known, means, and your data is also accessible to everyone. So all this is a problem with C. Now I have another program here, which is little better than the previous code, but still it is C. It is still done in C. You can observe that there is no class mentioned anywhere. So it is still C. So, but it is definitely better than the previous because I have hash defined max. So I'm not having max as 100. Here stack size 100 was here. So that I have changed. And I have defined max 100 and then val max int val max. So like this, this is definitely a better code than the previous one, trying to make it as generic as possible or as easy to manage as possible. You have a stack pointer of the type stack. So you see, observe, you have defined a structure of the type stack. Are you able to observe the code? Again, another point I wanted to mention, which I missed in the previous class, was we don't teach programming. Okay, we don't teach programming in this course. Programming you are supposed to do yourself. We will just give you the concepts, ideas. What is OOPS and the concepts of the object oriented. So don't expect that we will teach programming in the class. programming you are supposed to do. Try, and you can definitely make it. And if you are having any difficulties or any problem, you can come and meet us. Okay, just observe this code. So you have an initialization of the stack. You have push, pop, is empty. So all this. So this is definitely better than the previous. But still, it is not as good as we want it to be. It is still not generic, because still it is the same data type, integer data type. Only advantage is that I can define, I can have 2 stacks, 3 stacks with my own names, like stack of, whatever, one called as A and another called as B. So I can have multiple stacks without any worry. So that problem is almost solved. But the data type problem, I cannot change the integer data type. Means it's always a integer kind of a stack. So it's again the same size. Of course, you have to change the max value and recompile, and then only it works. So again, the same issue with C, which is no hiding of data, no protection or hiding of data. Right. So this is a review of what we did in the previous class. So as I told, in structural programming or procedural programming, which is like as an example in C, C language is a procedural programming language. So there you have interaction between the functions. Data moves around the function, or common data is there on which each of these functions act. There is some common data. I am not shown in the diagram. Assume that there is some common data, and each of these functions can access that data and manipulate that data. And sometimes functions themselves can pass data to each other, between each other, and try to work out some meaningful task. So that is the procedural programming approach. When you come to object-oriented programming approach, what you have is not functions. What you have is objects. You have multiple objects in a single program, possibly multiple objects or classes, and then again there is an interaction between these objects. In this is what we call message passing, or passing of messages. So data is passed between, or messages are passed between the objects, and the work is done. So that's the object-oriented approach. So therefore, very clearly, the basic element in object-oriented programming is classes. Whereas in structural or procedural programming, the basic element would be functions. The unit of programming, or whatever you call, should be functions here and objects here. So another reason, it's the same thing. It's not another. Whatever I have explained, I've just listed down here. One point, this point number 1 is additional. So simplify programming. So the point is common codes can be easily reused. Using OOP, it is designed in such a way that there will be a lot of common programs or common codes that can be easily reused. So you need not write every time the same code. One is that. And second is, in C programming, so many mistakes or pitfalls were there. We used to, that is, we in the sense, the programmers used to commit those mistakes or pitfalls every now and then. And in C++, they made rules and regulations so that these common pitfalls will never happen. Otherwise, you will be simply finding out what mistake I made, so you will not be concentrating on the actual task. Rather, you will simply be trying to find your errors or mistakes or pitfalls. So this was in C. So instead, what we have done is, or what C++ has done is, there are a lot of rules and regulations which you're supposed to follow. For example, when you use pointers in C, there are so many mistakes or errors possible while using pointers in C. So to avoid all those mistakes, all those it's not deliberately done, but you will miss it. That's the reason it's called pitfall. Like, so you will forget to initialize, or you will forget to do some giving back your allocated memory, or you will do such task. It was not deliberate, but you forgot or you made some small error. Therefore, such errors are now not possible in C++ because there are so many rules that you have to follow, and so many rules are built in so that you will be made to follow. So that's the reason you have got reference variables in C++, whereas there is no reference variable in C. So when we discuss the reference variables, we will discuss that. So the point is, common mistakes or pitfalls that were done in C are now taken care by rules and regulations of C++. And another point, the next is the interfaces. That is, so give only what is required by the other programmer or by your co-programmer. So don't give entire code. Just give the interface. So you'll be able to hide the information and hide the what you call code also. So that they don't do any manipulation of the code. Implementation details hidden within classes themselves. So that is the advantage, information hiding. And then software reuse, as I told again and again. So you will be able to reuse the software. So the same objects can be included as members of other classes. Yeah, so this was one topic which we told in the previous class, that you will be doing a mini project. We will give you more details on this, whether it is one single project or two different projects in the days to come. But right now, all of you should form a group, and you have to inform the group, the team names, the team member names by 30th August. Okay, so try looking for your teammates and make a group. Group size is 4 or 5. So not less than 4 and not more than 5. 4 or 5, 4 to 5 students can form a group. So this was what we did in the previous years. That is, you are supposed to do two mini projects, but it's a continuation of the same. I mean, it's like a one whole project which you will be showing, partially after the first internal, and the second evaluation will be done after the second internal. That is how we used to follow. So I'm just showing you the same, but these details may change. But as of now, as I told you, be ready for the mini project and make a group of 4 to 5. Further details we will let you know soon. So you can think about any program or to implement, and it should use all the topics that we have covered in the class. So whatever topics that we cover, try to use all those topics in your code. So that's the basic idea. So that you will, as the days proceed, you will be writing a big code. So possibly, somewhere in the range of 800 to 1000 lines of code at the end of the semester, I'm saying. You can build on, you can keep building on. So the projects are plenty. You can look at library management, college management, or school management, school data, college data, or banking. So you have ticketing. You have a lot of things to look at. Shopping. So many are there. You can just decide between yourself and make a team, and then decide the topic and start working on it. So further details we will let you know soon. And as I told, it will be a part of your internal marks. Madam?
Can I add one point to this?
Yeah.
Student, make sure it is not repeated in the whole of your whatever group, P group, okay? Because it is the combined one. So we will make sure that your whatever project you have selected is unique and it is not repetitive, okay? So make sure you have n number of all the projects you can think of, but it should contain all your C++ as sir has mentioned. So you can think of any inventory or banking, student management or college management, any kind of, but it contains all our C++ concept. Okay. So it should not be repetitive in a whole PE group, your whole group, E and F section. Okay. Yeah. You can continue, sir.
Yes, madam. Thank you. Right. So coming to the topic of classes and objects. So the definition or maybe in many slides, the classes definition in a different way will be coming up. So the point is we will be viewing class in a different perspective, but all the definitions are correct or all the definitions are true. So you'll have a different perspective of the same topic. So it may come up in many different slides. Okay, so in this particular slide, class is defined as or is told to be the cornerstone of C++. That is what we were discussing every time, right? Classes is the basic unit or the fundamental programming unit in OOPS or C++. So classes is the cornerstone of C++. Class consists of both data and methods. I told you in the previous class also. Data and methods put together becomes a class. Methods are also called as functions. Methods and functions meaning is same. Defines, that is class defines properties and behavior of a set of entities. Like in our case, human was a class, and we said human will have a property. What is the property? What do you call? Name, age, date of birth. So these are properties of the human. Behavior. Whatever can be done by a human becomes a behavior, maybe walking or jumping or running or talking. So anything that that object or that class can do becomes the behavior, some method or some function. Properties is data, behavior is functions. So it makes possible encapsulation, data hiding, and inheritance. So classes make it possible. That is, using classes, I'll be able to encapsulate my data. Keep the data in a small this thing, and data hiding and inheritance is also possible. We will see what is inheritance later. That is when we come up to the inheritance topic. So what is an object? An object is an instance of a class. So what do you mean by instance of a class? It is just like, see, for example, class is like a int. I mean, in your C programming, you say int x, int a, int b. Now, int is what? The data type or the integer type. So that is, it has certain properties or certain things that are rules and regulations that the int follows. And a, b, c or x, y, z are the instances of the integer. Following? Int a, int b, int c we write. So int a, int b, int c. That means a, b, c are examples of integers. So they are instances of integers. So similarly, when I say class is on paper. Class definition, if I say class complex, or class human, age, date of birth. So these are the data things that I define. So this is on paper. Whatever I say, class, human, his name, his age, or whatever. So all those are on paper. But when I say human, means when I try to declare or use a human class in the program, that becomes an instance of the class. Say human h1, when I say, that means human 1, human h2, human h3, just like int a, b, c. So human a, human b, human c. So there are 3 different human beings, a, b, c. So they are instances of human. Getting it? So instance, so object is real, means object is what you store in memory. Class is on paper. There is nothing occupied by the class as it is. Objects take up memory. So object is an instance of a class. Object is stored in memory. Okay. Next, it says a variable identified by a unique name. That is what even I told you. So it's a variable identified by a unique name, or object will have a variable which is identifying a unique object or a unique. So the same point using diagram or an figurative approach. What is an object? An object will have data and operations or methods or functions, data and functions. So what will operations do? The set of methods or functions that is the operations. So which is basically public members and private member functions. So similarly, data means the internal state. The object will have an internal state. That means the values of the private data members and public data members. Whatever values you have, so that becomes the state of the object. Okay. Now we will see how the class is constructed, or what is the how to define a class and all that. So class, so this is another definition. Class can be viewed as a programmer defined data type. So what is already predefined data type, like int, float, char? So these are predefined data types already existing, pre-existing. But complex, for example, or a human, they are not defined, they are not predefined. So you can write your own data type or programmer defined data type. That's called, that's what we also call as a class. So these are other terminologies that we can, that we may come across. Data or attributes, both are one and the same, or properties, all are one and the same. Member functions, again, member functions are the functions that you have in the class. So types of access, public, private. So there are other accesses possible, protected and friend. So these things we will see in later stage. Public and private, we will look at that now. That is in the few minutes time, but protected and friend, we will see that later. So defining data members and member functions. So how do you define? How do you write the class definition? So declared in the class of in the body of the class, that is data members and member functions are declared in the body of the class. I'll show with examples, but these are the points that you should be looking at. So they may be public or private. The data members and member functions can be public or private, and whatever you declare, they exist throughout the life of the object, and the data is stored in class object. Another point is each object has its own copy of data members, right? Just like how int x, int y, int z, so they will have their own memory storage allocation allocated to them. X is located somewhere, y is located somewhere. Similarly, human h1 is located somewhere, human h2 is located somewhere. So like that, every object has its own copy of data members. Whereas each class will have only one copy of member functions. Member functions you need not copy everywhere. Agree? For example, let us take the example of the human class, and let us assume that there is a member function which will calculate the age of the human, and if I have 4 human instances, this age function or this age member function need not be repeatedly copied in all the 4 human functions. Getting the idea? So because it's a member function which calculates the age, so whatever is the, as an example, I'm telling you a member function which calculates the age. So any member function, it is the same copy. It's the same. So between all the humans, it's the same function. So therefore, you need not store it separately for every object. So just one copy of the member functions is enough. Whereas the data for every human will be different, because his date of birth, human 1's date of birth will be different from human 2. Similarly, human 1's name will be different from human 2, right? Data will be different, but functions are the same. That's the reason each object has its own copy of data members, whereas each class will have one copy of member functions. Right? Quite simple and logical. Classes in C++. So how the definition is done. So a class definition begins with the keyword class. The body of the class is contained within a set of braces. So you have to use these flower braces, open, square, open and close, and with a semicolon. So just like this, class name, and open braces and close braces with a semicolon in the end. And the body of the class would be inside. So this is how it is. So class name can be any valid identifier. You can give any valid identifier class name. And what you have inside the class is the body, the data members, and the member functions. And now coming to the class body. So within the class body itself, you have private and public keywords that are possible, which will specify the access level of the members of the class. So if you don't specify anything, it would become private. So because default is private. So if you don't specify, it is naturally or defaultly taken as private. So usually the data members of a class are declared private because we don't want the data to be accessed by others. So usually by other functions or by other co-programmers, we usually keep the data as private. Whereas member functions would be kept as public or would be declared as public. Right? Okay. One question here. Can I have a class having completely private members, private data and private member functions? Is that possible? There is nothing public there. Everything is private. Class which has no members which are public. Is that possible? Most of you have done this topic, or maybe you are familiar with this. So some of those students can answer. So can I make everything private? Or alternatively, can I make everything public?
Okay. You could make everything public, but I don't think you can make everything private. And the object won't be able to access anything outside.
Okay. So that's the only answer. Somebody else also tried? Nobody? Right. Okay. So one student says that if you make everything private, then it's of no use. Agreed? All of you. So if you make a class and declare all the class members as a private entity, then you will not be able to use that at all. It's a useless class. It's of no use. And then if you make everything public, that's as good as C. I mean, almost. So at least the idea of information hiding is missing. Right? But it is still a class. It still has the properties of a class, but the one major property, which is information hiding or encapsulation, all that would be missing. So therefore, this is the usual practice. Data would be private and member functions would be public. But there is a chance that not all member functions can be or should be made public. Not all member functions should be made public. Few member functions you can make private and few member functions you can make public. Like for example, in our human class example, if you want to display the name, or if you want to ask the name of the human, maybe that is what do you call a function which is public. But at the same time, if you want to calculate the age, so you can what do you call you can make this calculation of age function itself as private, so that nobody else can manipulate the function and give a wrong age or something like that. I mean, I'm just giving you an example. You don't want others to access this function or directly call this function and all that, so then you can make it private. So date of birth can be made public, age can be made private. Age in the sense the calculation of age. Age is not stored. I mean, as an assumption, I'm just our class, whatever we want to say. I am storing name and I am storing date of birth. Age I am not storing. Age will be calculated anytime. So the calculation of age can be made as a private member function. The calculation is done privately. So no, it's not like your co-programmer will ask you, no, you give me the date of birth, I'll calculate the age. No. You say, no, I don't give you the date of birth. You want age, I'll give you the age. Something like that. So you can have a private member function, and then you ask for the age, and you can find out and give that, or calculate and give that, something like that. So I hope you are having the idea between private and, I mean, how do you decide private and public, and what happens if you make everything private, and what happens if you make everything public. So just judiciously, you have to place some things in the private area and some things in the public area. So this is how the private and public keywords would be appearing in your class definition. So when you say private colon, whatever under that members will be private members, and similarly when you say public colon, whatever under that or what member functions or data members that come under the public keyword will become public members. So coming to the details of the public and this thing, so public can be accessed outside the class directly. Public members accessible from anywhere within a program. So public functions are the interface. So non-member functions can access these public members whenever they need to use the class. Private, so accessible only to member functions of a class and friends of the class. Can be applied to both data members and member functions. So private members are methods for internal use only. Right? I mean, this is quite, as I told you, the age example. So I don't want others to calculate the age in a different way or wrong age to be calculated. So I don't ask others to calculate the age. I will do it myself, something like that. So you can keep it internally. You can keep it for your use. And private is the default access, as I told you earlier also. So this private property, that is the private access specifier, encourages information hiding. Member access specifiers, the same point continued. That is, often we use functions by this name, get and set functions. Can have any other name also, but that is the standard name that we use for getting the parameters or the data values and setting the data values of a class. Suppose get name, so name of the human. You want to know what is the name of this human, then you can say get name. And if you want to set a new name to this human, then you can use set and the name, whatever you want to set for. So to access private members in controlled ways, that is, you can have these get and set functions to access the private members in a controlled way. So you're not allowing others to write a function for getting or a function for setting. So you have written the function, you have given only the only the interface, that is only the how to use it, how to call, only that is given to the others. So each access control section is optional, repeatable, and sections may occur in any order. So it's not that you have to write public first and private next, or vice versa. Nothing like that. You can keep repeating public, private, private, public, whatever you want. You can keep repeating in any way, and you need not specify if it is private. So it says optional, and it can occur in repeatedly and in any sections, in any order. Okay. So difference between classes and structures in C++, that is, so in classes the default access is private, whereas the default access specifier in structures is public. So that's the difference between class and structure in C++. Protected, so access public for derived classes. As I told, we will discuss this protected later when we come to that inheritance and things like that, or even right now only the private and public would be of more importance. We can come back to private, protected later also. So protected acts as public for derived classes and behaves as private for the rest of the program. We will understand this later. Okay, so another example. So let us just observe this class example. The class name is time. Means you are trying to manipulate or keep the time, keep the time in your program, or upkeeping of the time. So obviously you can give see, if you are giving this function or this particular code to others, then others will say, I want to set the time, so please give me an interface. So this is the interface, void set int hours, int minutes, int seconds. So this is the interface to set the time. So others can set the time. If you are allowing the others to set the time, you can do that. Then others can say display. If they want to look at the time, so you can give them this display interface. Display int hours, int minutes and seconds. So this can be done. Display can be done and set can be done, and that is the reason it is under public. So public, look at what is there in private. So as expected, all the integers, hours, minutes and seconds, they're all in private. And there is one more member function which is also in private. What is that member function? Increment. Increment is basically, every second you are trying to increment the seconds and keep your time, right? And you don't want to give this increment function to the public. Following? So that's the reason you have made it private. Why you don't want to give the increment function to public? Because they may call it randomly and change your time. That is, they'll not run the time properly, or they may manipulate, whatever. So you don't want to give, okay, whatever is your reasons for not giving it. So you can place it in private. So increment cannot be called from the outside world. Getting it? So just as an example, so set can be called from the outside world, display can be called from the outside world. If you don't want the set also, you can say, I will only set the time, you just have to see the time. So that's also possible. Don't even give the set option. So your will and your wish, your decision. This is another visual representation of the same. See, this is the time class. You have set interface, which is trying to bridge between the outside world and the class. Similarly, display, which is again bridging from outside world to the class. And see what you have as private. Private are these things which you cannot access. And there is increment function. Again, it's private and you cannot access. Following? So what is here? That is this interface. Only these two are the functions which are known to the outside world. Outside world is your co-programmers or people who are using your time class. People who are using your time class. They become your co-programmers, or they become your users of your code. Simple?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
So another example. So class example shows how we can encapsulate a circle information into one package. So you have a class circle and you have a radius of the circle, which is the data. So that is made private, and there are so many other functions which are related to circle, which are all made public. So the outside person can set radius, then get the diameter, get area, get circumference. So all these are possible. So this is the private member, data member. So I'll put the radius as the private data member, so that nobody else can access this. These are public data members or member functions, so anybody can access. So they are accessible from outside the class, say from the main function block, or they can access the private members. Only these member functions can access the radius. So if you want to touch this radius private data member, then you have to go through one of these public member function, because all of these public member functions will be able to access the radius because they are the part of the same class. So some function which is not a part of this class cannot access the radius. Okay. So creating an object of a class. So until now we have just defined a class. Defined the class. Now we will create an object of the class. So that is what create an object is, nothing but getting an instance or instantiation. Declaring a variable of the class type creates an object. You can have many variables of the same type, that is same class. So that's what we call as instantiation. So once an object, I'll show you examples in the next few slides, but just look at this. So once an object of a certain class is instantiated, that is created, memory space is allocated for it to store its data members and code. So remember that code is only once, the first time. Code will not be, memory space will not be allocated for code again and again. Only data members, memory will be allocated. For code, no memory will be allocated repeatedly. So this is how you can create an instance of a object, just like circle we had in the previous slide, circle. So circle A, so A is an instance. Circle pointer B, so B is an instance of a pointer to the circle type. Circle C of 10, that means you have an array of 10 circles. So these are the ways in which you can create objects of the class circle. So another example. So this is the generic code, class name, permission label, member, and all that. So these are called headers, and these are the body that we saw in the previous this thing also. Another example would be the class rectangle. So similarly, now the class name is rectangle. The permission labels are private and public. Members are width, integer, that is width and length are the members. Set and area are the other set of members. So they are all members. Right? Clear? Okay. So now having this class, let us try to create some objects of this class rectangle. So that's it. Rectangle R1, rectangle R2, rectangle R3, or even you can write rectangle just like in integers, how we do R1, R2, R3. That's also possible. So this is just like, just as an example, int A, when we used to, where we used to instantiate or create a data type of integer and yeah. So R1, R2, R3 are nothing but something similar to the variable names A. Rectangle is something similar to the data type called int. Something like this, right? So class definition. continued. So you have something called a static data member and non-static data member. Until now, whatever we saw, I mean the examples that we saw were of non-static data type, non-static data member. So non-static data member, these are the features of a non-static data member. Each class object has its own copy. Each class object has its own copy. Non-static. Cannot be initialized explicitly in the class body. So you cannot initialize a non-static data member in the class body. Can be initialized with member functions or class constructor. So coming to static data member. So what is a static data member of a class? So static data member of a class acts as a global object, part of a class, but not part of an object of that class. And if you have a static member in a class, then only one copy per class is instantiated, not one copy per object. Observe that. Only one copy per class type and not one copy per object. Can be initialized explicitly in the class body. So look at the differences, static and non-static. Whatever we did till now were non-static data members. So now something new is what we are studying is static data member in this slide. So these are the points. I'll explain these things with an example in the next slide. Right. So this is the rectangle class and these are private data, and this one observe here static int count. So this is the static data type, static data member here, static int count, and you have public. So whatever the rectangle related public member functions. What our main observation is this static int count. And let us assume that I create rectangle 1, rectangle 2, rectangle 3. So how many rectangles are there? 3 rectangles, R1, R2, R3. So therefore, how many width and how many length would be there? There will be 3 width and 3 length, one for each. R1, R2, R3. So 3 width and 3 length. How many static int count? How many will be there? Only one. One per class. So when I have rectangle class, then it will be only one count. It will not be 3 counts because you have 3 rectangles. It will not be 3 count. Whereas width and length, you have 3 widths and 3 lengths, but count is only one. Just observe that. That is the meaning. You have R1, you created R1, you created R2, you have created R3. Each one of them will have width, length, width, length, width, length. But count is a single because it is static type. So count is a single copy. Okay, so you got that idea. And another point it says is that width cannot be initialized or length cannot be initialized. Like in C, if you remember, we used to write int width equal to 0, possible. In C, it is possible. Equal to 1, equal to whatever, some initialized value is possible in C, but in C++, it is not possible. Not possible for non-static data type, but it is possible for static data type. That was the difference in the previous slide. One copy and all that was mentioned. Okay. Now we will discuss a little more on static class members. So static class members shared by all objects of the class. So we just saw in the previous slide, count was shared by all the objects. You have 10 objects, or that is you have 10 rectangles. Still you have only one count. Okay, it will be shared. So used only when a single copy of data is needed. So when should you use static? Only when a single copy of data is needed. Just like static in C, if some of you have studied the static variable in C, something very similar is this in C++. So it may seem like global variables, but have a class scope. So static variables seems like like a global variable, but the class scope is there. What do you mean by class scope? That means it is accessible only by the objects of the same class. And another interesting point is that static data member exists even if no objects of the class exist. Okay, that's the reason you can initialize the static data member, because you can have a static data member existing even if there is no object of that class.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
But sir, to access that static member, we need to have an object of the class, right?
Yes, correct. What you said is right. To access any data member, you are supposed to go via the object. But in this case, that is in the case of static members, no need of that. So we'll come to that point now in the next slide or something. Usually all the data members are accessed through the object name, or that is basically one object should be there, then only it exists. I mean, then only you will be able to access the data. But since this point very clearly mentions it exists even if there is no object of the class, so that makes it very clear that even without any object, I'll be able to initialize and I'll be able to manipulate. So that we will see in the next slides.
One more question, sir.
Yeah.
So for example, there is a int data member in the class, and there is an object corresponding to it also, and I declare a int pointer a variable int star a, int star b, something like that, and I get the address of that variable from the class.
This variable inside this variable is inside the object. This variable, integer variable, or this integer data type is a part of the class.
And I get the yes, sir. And I get the address of that variable in a pointer outside the class.
Outside the class? No, not possible. You can declare a pointer to the object, but not to the member, data member. Address of that data member, I don't think it is possible. You can access that through the pointer of the object.
Okay.
So initialize that file scope. Yeah. Accessing static members. So how this static members are accessed? So public static variables accessible throughout the code. So you can use the scope resolution operator. Employee. So this is the way to use scope resolution operator. The class name : count. Count is the static member or the static variable, and employee is the class name. Class name : count will give you the access to the static member. So private static members, you have to use how to access private static variable is through the use of a public static member function. So prefix with a class name and that scope resolution operator. So employee : get count. Okay. So if the count was public, then I can directly use it. But if the count is private, then I have to find a method which can get hold of the count value. And static member functions cannot access non-static data or functions. So once I declare as member function as static, then they cannot access non-static data or functions. And there is no this pointer because function exists independent of objects. Of course, most of us don't know what is this pointer, so don't worry about it. So it simply says the point. You just remember that in the case of static members, there is no this pointer. So class definition, member functions used to access the value of the data members, perform operations on the data members. So what is the purpose of member functions? So the purpose is to access the values and do some operations on the data members. And these member functions are declared inside the class body in the same way as declaring a function. Can access both public and private members of the class. Member functions can access both public and private members of the class. So can be referred to using dot arrow member access operator. So we'll see this in the next few slides. So in this slide is simply telling you the purpose of member functions. So purpose is to manipulate the data. So that is what we said from the beginning. Member functions will change the or will manipulate the data members, and access also possible. Means you can give access to data members through member functions. Implementation of the class is writing the code for the classes. So that means you're supposed to, until now we just defined the class, declared the class. Now we are trying to implement or define. So how do you define? Using the class name, return type, class name, scope resolution operator, and all that. So there are two ways. One is if the member functions are defined outside the class, and another way is member functions are defined inside the class. Now this format or this method is for when you declare the member functions outside the class. And observe that different classes can have member functions with the same name. The point is written there. Different classes can have member functions with the same name. So this is the example of the circle, declaration is all done here and definition is done here. So observe the scope resolution operator, class name colon scope resolution operator, class name colon return type. Okay, in this case it is return type, double circle scope resolution operator, get area, and you write the code for getting the area. So like this. So this is one method of defining the member functions. Then second method of defining the member functions, which is basically inside the class. I mean, there is no major difference, just where you are writing the definition, inside or outside. If you write it inside, then scope resolution operator is of no use because you know where or which class it belongs to. So you need not specify it again. So this is the same thing or the same class circle definition, which is wherein all the member functions are defined inside the class itself. Okay, accessing class members. So I told you that we can use dot operator and the arrow operator for accessing the class members. So when you should use dot operator is when you are using the object as it is or reference to the object. In these two cases, you can use a dot operator. And when you should use that is arrow operator, that is when you are using pointers to the objects. Okay, I'll show you this with an example also. So when you say arrow, that means you are using pointers. When you say dot, that means you are using non-pointer, that is object or reference. So this is the example. We will see how that is done now. So rectangle is the class, width, length are the private data members. All these are the member functions, set and area. Now I'll declare two in the main code. I'll declare two rectangles R1 and R2. Then I'll say R1 dot set of 5, 3. So this is how I'll use the dot operator, R1 dot set of 5, 8. So R2 dot set of 8, 10. So this will call this function and execute on the corresponding object. Here it was R1 and here it is R2. Right? This is the dot operator, how the dot operator is used. Another example for the dot operator maybe, yeah, still it is the dot operator. C dot store, C dot display. Another example. This is another example. Now coming to the, what do you call? Oh, okay, still it's another example. So I'm just looking for the arrow operator. So class name, member function, scope resolution operator. All that is very clearly shown here. Now define rectangle R1 comma star rectangle pointer. That is a pointer to the rectangle. So I have two things here. One is R1 as it is, the object as it is, and then another there is a pointer to the object star RP. In such a situation, we are supposed to use like this. When you are using R1, then R1 dot set. If you are using RP, then it is rectangular pointer, arrow operator, then set of 8, 10. So this is how you are supposed to use the arrow operator when you have declared a pointer. This is not the complete code. A lot of code is missing, but I'm just, the point is only trying to show you the how the arrow operator is used along with the pointer. In few slides ago, we saw static data members. Now we will see the static member functions. Static functions, member functions, static functions. So static data members belong to a class rather than to any object of the class, right? That is what we saw. If we use a public member function to access static data members, then we need an object to call the public member function. Right? This is what one of your classmates pointed out, that how do you access the data members without any object? So that was one question. So this is what is the same point which is mentioned here. So if we use a public member function to access static data members, then we need an object to call the public member function. So without the object, you cannot access the member function. So used for initializing static data members in a class. So static member functions are the way to access static data members without the help of any object. So observe that the point number 2 says that there is a rule like this usually, and the point number 4 says, but at least for static data members, I can write static member functions using which I'll be able to access those static data without the help of any object. No need of an object, but still I'll be able to manipulate the static data. Static member functions. So that same example, I mean, whatever was said here, the example is over here. Account is the class. Observe here that there is a static int s underscore value. So this is the static variable. It is of private type, static variable. Because of the keyword static, it's a static variable. Okay. Therefore, you have a initialization which is possible like this. Int account s underscore value equal to 1. So this is okay, even though it is a private value, I mean private data type. Still, this is possible to initialize since it's a definition. But in the main function, how will you access this s underscore value since it is private? So since this value is private, I'll not be able to access this directly. So for this particular reason, I have the static member functions. So static return type function name. So you'll have to use a member function like this. Int, that is static int get value. The return type is static int get value. Sorry, return type is int. The function is static. Function is static. Return type is int. Get value is the name of the function, and it simply returns the s underscore value. This value it is going to return. So then now in your main program, you can use this get value function and you'll be able to access the yes value. Right? Were you able to appreciate the purpose of static member functions? Static member functions. Okay. Constant member functions. So this is quite simple. So you have two options to declare that. I mean, just like two options to define the regular, member function. This also is showing you both the options here. Anyhow, the common option or the common thing is over here, top return type, function name, parameter list. Constant is written in the end and then a semicolon. So that's the only difference, that a member function is constant or non-constant. So this is a constant member function. So what is the advantage or what is the point in having a constant member function? It says that a constant member functions cannot modify the data members. So it's a read-only option that a constant member function will have, read-only option. So it is illegal for a constant member function to modify a class data type. So whenever I declare a function as a constant function, then it cannot modify the data members. If it tries to modify it, the compiler immediately says it's an error. So it is illegal, you cannot do it. Just like this. This is the example. Display, for example, display of the time is only read, right? You want to read the time and display. You don't want to manipulate. Basically, that's the function's purpose. The purpose of display is to read and display the values. There is no requirement for display to manipulate the original values. So therefore, because this display is only read-only kind of a function, so I'll declare it as a constant. The advantage is that you are telling to the compiler that this member function should not alter the data members. And if this is violated anywhere in the function, then inform me by raising an error. So you are just telling to the, you are just taking the assistance of the compiler to avoid your mistakes or to identify your mistakes. You are telling this is a constant function and it should not manipulate. By any chance, if you write a code which tries to manipulate, then it immediately flags an error. So this is what I was telling. A lot of pitfalls will be avoided. So this is one simple example of pitfall being avoided. Right. So we'll stop it here and continue in the next class. Any other questions? Any questions?
No, sir.
Yeah. Okay, right. So then we will stop it here. We'll continue in the next class.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.